live? Okay.
I'll hear
you. Hello and welcome back to the Great Give Radiothon on WNHH FM. Today, as you know, we are highlighting some of the wonderful nonprofits in the greater New Haven area who are raising funds during the 36-hour Great Give. This is a fundraising event hosted by the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. And, you know, all of the nonprofits you're hearing from today can be found and donated to on thegreatgive.org. So don't forget the before the address. So today we're really thrilled and lucky to have representatives from Adams House, Allison and Noelle. And I hear that you brought a quasi.
I think it falls somewhere in the middle. Actually.
Okay.
Thank you for having us. So I think it's a good segue into Allison kind of introducing what we do, but our quote is, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." And that's from Winnie the Pooh, everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
I love Winnie.
That's a great quote.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll just kind of jump right into what your mission is at Adams House. Could you just kind of tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah. So Adams House is a bereavement center located in Shelton, Connecticut, and we provide peer support and grief education to families who have lost a loved one. So children and their families, if a child is struggling with any person in their life that they've lost due to an unexpected death, a grandparent, a parent, a sibling, a friend, they are welcome to come to our program, which is called Helping Hearts Heal, and it is an 8-week curriculum-based program at no cost, which is why events like the Great Give are so important and imperative that we raise funds so that we can keep those services free for these bereaved families in Connecticut.
Yeah, it's amazing work.
Thank you.
Helping Hearts Heal, is that like an overnight program or?
So it is once a week for 2 hours. We start with a dinner and then we break out into our groups, which are parents, littles, middles, and teens. And then all the groups are doing kind of the same topic, just different based on what their sometimes the littles are more active, so there's more game playing, and maybe the teens are more artistic, so then there's more arts and crafts, and then the parents will do something that their kids are doing in the parent group. Yeah.
And what are some examples of the themes that they tackle each week?
So great question. So the themes are, well, basically you're going to tell your story one of the weeks, and we kind of work really hard at making sure that group is a safe and secure place that you want to share your story, and it's your death story. And then we go into the feelings, all the feelings associated with that loss, coping skills, and that's really the biggie because, you know, we like to numb all the icky feelings that are associated with loss. So you'll get, addiction, you'll get drinking, you'll get all sorts of negative coping skills that crop up with when you're dealing with bereavement. And so we kind of we heavily talk about, substituting those out for positive coping. We work on memories. There's healing in the remembering, not the forgetting. And, everyone kind of comes to it like the minute they forget, they're healed. But that's really kind of not the good strategy. So we talk about that. And rituals is a week. And then we have then we end with the celebration of life. Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I feel like it can be so hard to talk about death and loss and to create that kind of community where those conversations are guided and supported. Seems like a need that I can imagine a lot of people are really benefiting from.
Yeah. I always say the offshoot is that we're pushing out like really great grievers, like these kids have learned, like it's okay to talk about my person, and they learn that there, and then they're the ones now going into schools, and when someone's had a loss, they're like, you have to go to Adams House. Like they really helped me, and I lost my dad, and they're actually not afraid. They've become less death adverse, and so we could take a page from these kids' books.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about the value of having it be sort of a group-oriented program as opposed to more like one-on-one?
Yeah, it's peer support, right? And so, you as an adult can tell a child one thing, but when they hear it from another child who's going through the same exact thing as them, it becomes very powerful. And so there's strength. These kids get really close really quickly. They trust each other really quickly, and then they do the work quickly. And so, we've had teens who have talked about, hiding alcohol in the woods and going out in the school day to like numb their pain. And not the facilitators of the group, but the peers in that group, and be like, how's that working for you? Like, what's that doing to your grief?
Yeah.
And so, like, that is more powerful than, you know, a teacher or an adult in their life saying, you know, stop drinking. So,
Yeah.
it's peer support.
Absolutely.
Yeah, power in the peer support.
Is there anything that you think people might have maybe misconceptions about, or might not fully understand about the impact and the need for this type of program?
Sure. I mean, the big one is when they look at a child who has gone through a loss and they see them playing, they're like, see, they're fine. And kids grieve like that. Kids grieve the same way we do, but in very small increments. So 1 minute they could be hysterically crying, and then the next minute they're playing happily with their friend. And so we get some parents who think there's something wrong with my child. And I'm like, nope, that's exactly how they should grieve. But a lot of times, you know, children get dubbed the forgotten mourners because they just think they're resilient, they're kids, they have their whole life ahead of them. We don't really need to tend to this because they're not really talking about it. But then they also don't attribute or connect the behaviors that they might start to see maybe 6 months, 9 months after the loss. To be like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden there's abstinence. Oh my gosh, there's so much anger and there's destruction. And they kind of don't connect it back to like these unresolved grief feelings that have just been pushed down and buried and not tackled. So,
yeah. And I don't know if you could speak to, I guess, anything more about the types of families and communities that you serve. I know you said this is a totally free program. And you said that people experience kind of a lot of different types of losses.
Yeah. So we don't, I mean, if they want to come, you know, we have all losses. So suicide, sadly, you know, overdoses are a big one in our community. We really draw from the state. I'm going to sound like a bad commercial always, like we're conveniently located off Route 8. So, you know, we really pull from everyone. And look, it's an 8-week commitment. So that's what we ask our parents to do is like when they learn about the program and they want their families to participate, we ask that they make an 8-week commitment and attend because like I said, these kids have had loss and I'm trying to prevent a subsequent loss. If I get connected to you in program, I want to ensure that you're going to show up for all the weeks. And we ask of that of our volunteers as well.
Yeah. You were mentioning before that there's maybe a little bit of a ripple effect or a chain effect of one kid goes through this program and then they're able to be in their own communities and kind of modeling a different relationship to grief.
Right.
I'm curious, like, if you could see rippling out of Adam's house, like a different culture or some type of impact around the way that collectively we all think about grief and
I
death.
hope so.
What would you envision for that?
That's the old dream. That's
the
dream. That is the dream. We are a death adverse culture, and I would love us not to be because we can't avoid it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't live on this planet and not be. You're going to have someone die, unfortunately. The out of order deaths are really hard, but you're going to experience it. And I think our culture needs to be better about being willing to talk about it and be willing to support it and not, everyone thinks, I don't know, I don't have the perfect words and I don't know what to say. So therefore, I'm going to say nothing and I'm going to run away from the person who is bereaved. And so, we do a lot of that, we do a lot of that coaching because we get those calls all the time to be like, you know what, you have to be a really good listener. You have to be a little kind and empathetic and you have no words that are ever going to take that pain away, but you can be still a huge support for that person.
Yeah, I'm curious if there are any like phrases or ways of opening up that conversation that you go to yourselves.
I think to a bereaved person, I never assume I know what they need that particular day because they're a little bit of a moving target. So I always like to open with like, I'm here. I'm willing to listen. Anything you want to, give me, I'm willing to hear about your person or any of the emotions attached. And if you don't want to do that today because your brain needs a break, then let me know and I'll distract you with a whole host of things. Yeah. So. Yeah. I think you just have to tell your person that, you are able and willing and, ready to take it, to receive it.
So while I'm curious, you're hearing all of this, is there anything that comes to mind about Adam's House's mission that you want to bring to the forefront?
I think the most important thing is that at the end of that consistent 8-week, that closed program that we do, that there's that honoring of the person. I think just kind of builds on what Allison said. that it's not about the forgetting, it's about keeping that person with you and how you're honoring them and their memory as you move on. A lot of our alumni do come back for different events that we have, and they miss being at the house and seeing what's going on there. So they do come back, and they like to connect, I think, with the next programs group as well, to kind of talk to them about what they went through and find different ways to connect in that way, which I think does lean toward helping that conversation around death.
Yeah, I can imagine that's helpful both for both ends of that conversation, like to kind of help someone through something that you've been through.
Yeah, a lot of them do want to reach back. You know, they enjoyed their time and, you know, got a lot of healing and recovery, and then they want to pay it forward when they're really short up, and so they do kind of come back in the form of like board members or volunteers, and we always love that. We love when that happens.
Yeah, and you were saying that this, of course, like grief and loss and any type of trauma can kind of lead to all sorts of other public health challenges that we often talk about, like on a macro level.
Mental health, yeah,
mental health, you know, substance use.
Yeah.
Could you, I guess, do you see this as almost like a public health program in some ways?
I mean, I definitely think, you know, it taps your mental health and building resiliency. And, you know, we have a lot of kids that are having a lot of trouble in school and having a lot of trouble in other areas. And, you know, truancy is a big one. And I think, you know, schools are, you know, worried about the absences, but on the other side, it's like they don't kind of can't help support the death piece. So I think that's kind of where we come in. We kind of get kids back to school, and we get, you know, parents, the caregiver back to work. You know, they feel, you know, supported and heard and validated.
And our calls come in from all sorts of places. A lot of it is word of mouth of families who've been through the program, but we also hear from local children's hospitals and from, you know, schools in general and other departments within the school system that, you know, find us and find, you know, that piece a little bit more robust at Adams House than what they can do in the school.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you talk a little bit about the work that you do with parents?
Yeah, so the parents, you know, go through a program, and I always like to say, like, we're going to help you with your kids, but then it really becomes about their grief journey. And so then I just kind of say, like, all right, I'm going to help you with your grief journey, because then you're going to be able to parent better. You know, parents struggle. Parents struggle with, I don't know when to talk about this. You know, my kid's happy. I don't want to bring them down and say, you know, and tap, like, how are you feeling about, you know, dad died. And then when they're sad about something that happened in school, I don't really want to go there. So I think the parents are very verbal in loving their weeks at Adams House, because it's a natural springboard. They get to kind of talk about, hey, you know what I did in group. I tell them, don't ask what they did in group. They're going to say nothing. Like school, tell them what you did in group. And then they're going to be like, oh, I did that too. And then you can kind of lean into these conversations that you might not normally have. But yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that you have to wear so many different hats as a parent. I can imagine that being a tricky thing to navigate.
Sure. And sometimes it just becomes a big elephant in the room. You know, then what ends up happening is they don't want to talk about it ever, or that never gets addressed, and everyone's dealing with all their grief emotions and tiptoeing around and walking on eggshells and kind of not addressing some of the things going on. Yeah.
Is there anything that either of you would like to add about Adams House?
No, I mean, no.
I just think the importance of the Great Give for us really is that our programs are free to participating families, and that's to take the burden off of a family that might be going through the financial changes that happen with loss. So the Great Give gives us a real opportunity to support those families without putting that onus onto them.
Sure. Maybe some of your listeners never heard of this service. So I love, like, there's a little grassroots too. So if there are families out there listening and struggling with the loss, then they should give the office a call, and we'll get started. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Allison and Noelle from Adams House for coming and talking about your important programs. So yes, we're here on our Great Give Radiothon with WNHH FM, and if you would like to donate and help sustain free grief support programs for families in the area, you can go to thegreatgive.org and look up Adams House. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah. All right.
I think we're all set.
Go Mets. Go Knicks, really. We should be really talking about the Knicks right now.